The PM has labelled himself as a candidate for change in his first speech as leader at the Tory party conference yesterday. But his announcements haven't been short of criticism. Scrapping the northern leg of HS2, reforming A-levels and banning cigarette sales are part of Sunak's agenda as he looks to extend the Tories 13 years inside number 10.
Well, joining us now is former Transport Minister and Liberal Democrat Norman Baker. Norman, thanks for joining us. What's your take on Rishi's speech yesterday?
Well, it's a bit rich to talk about the candidate for change when he's been in the government for ages and the Tories have been there for 13 years. The country certainly wants change, but he isn't it, I'm afraid. As far as HS2 is concerned, I mean, this is a catastrophe. Yes, it's been badly managed, and yes, it's well over budget. But actually cutting it off at Birmingham leaves a bleeding stump from Birmingham to Ordnance Common that's frankly not worth having. If you end up taking the train now from Birmingham to Euston, it's 1 hour and 19 minutes. By HS2, once you've changed to Ordnance Common, wherever that is, I've got a train into central London. And by the way, the Elizabeth line's at full capacity near enough. It's 1 hour and 20 minutes. So it's not quite clear what the purpose of this is. High-speed rail needs to be long distance to make sense. And the more and more it's amputated, the lower the economic return on it.
Norman, looking at the other side, and I understand that, it's one of those emotive subjects. Andy Burnham says, why is it always us against them? Sunak saying, I'm going to invest the $36 billion on other infrastructure in the north. We were talking, I really love a Liberal Democrat view on this. We were talking before the break about how this is the worst country in the world to try and rent a property and buy a house, skyrocketing. Yeah. If I was in the north of England, hear me out, Norman Baker, do I want to get to London in 12 minutes less, or do I want a government or a political party to make it more feasible for me to afford my rent, pay my gas bills and make sure that I make ends meet for my family?
Well, we need to do both of those things, quite honestly. I mean, certainly you raised some valid issues. But, you know, if HS2 had been started in the north, nobody would suggest cutting it off before it gets to London. It's because it started in the south, it's been cut short. As for the £36 billion of other schemes, most of them have been re-announced. Most of those have already been announced, and they've been re-announced yesterday. So they're fake new schemes from the Prime Minister.
That's interesting, because you're former Transport Minister, Norman. This $36 billion, you don't believe that this will actually make its way to people, or certainly that it's a kind of a false new policy?
Well, some of it was already announced and therefore will happen, but it's not new money. It's a standard technique of government to re-announce things. And secondly, you know, what guarantee can there be that will be delivered? I mean, we have cancellations for HS2, which are incapable of developing major infrastructure schemes in this country. You know, the Chinese got 40,000 kilometres of high-speed rail. The French have got 2,000. The Spanish, 4,000. We've got 67 miles. 67 miles only, and now we're not going any more.
It doesn't make much sense. Norman, I'm interested. Your leader, Sir Ed Davey, the other day said, and I quote, I would not rule out siding with the Labour Party in a coalition post-election. What I will not do is even consider anything to do with the Tories and want them out. You were part of a Liberal Party, a Liberal Democrat Party, that sided with David Cameron's government and ended up round the cabinet table. What do you think's going to happen? Will the election, will Keir Starmer march to Downing Street, or are the Liberal Democrats, are they going to hold the balance of power, my friend?
I think we'll hold the balance of power. If you look at the by-elections and the council elections, the Lib Dem swings from the Tories are much greater than the Labour swings from the Tories. And I think the Tory vote in the south, where we got so-called Liberal Conservatives, who are worried about things like the environment, worried about sewage in our rivers and so on, they're the ones who are most unhappy with the government at the present time. You know, the coalition, I'll defend that and say it was right. But, you know, that was the most sustainable and sensible government we've had for years, a coalition government. Since 2015, it's all gone pear-shaped.
That's a fair comment, but it would also be fair to say, Norman, because we look at all sides on Talk today, that many people in your party for many years felt you'd sold the things that you cared about, like tuition fees, round and down the river so you could form a government, and you went from 44 MPs to 8. Let's see if you do hold the balance of power after the election. Norman Baker, thank you very much indeed.